Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Big Freaking Friday on the Big Freaking College Football Mafia Network. I am, of course, your co-host, Moen, joined by my co-host, Wild Ute. Nate could not make it tonight. He is having some health issues, so speedy recovery up to Nate. Ute, how are you doing on this fine and fabulous Friday with frivolity?
Unfreaking believable. What a great day it is. And I cannot wait to break out the subject matter for today's show here and talk about RedBird Capital, talk about how private capital is going to get into the Big 12, how that's going to look, and what that means for the ACC if the Big 12 and when it strikes this deal fully and does it, finishes the RedBird Capital thing. So excited for it.
Absolutely. We're going to touch RedBird Capital. We're going to do a little, Big East ACC rumors permeated the Twitter sphere early this week. Our Professor Wild Ute has quite a few stats and statistics, and although stats and statistics are the same thing, but figures, financial figures, all kinds of stuff. We're going to break down how viable that could possibly be, having a Big East ACC merger. I want to thank everybody for coming in on this Friday night. Realize that we're running up against a little competition. We'll have a little overlap, but that's okay. I want to thank Greg for coming on the show last night. I want to thank everybody for coming in the show last night. I owe some people some sounders, so I'm going to go ahead and get some sounders, some media assets launched off here to thank everybody. See here. First of all, Ryan Willie. Ryan Willie was definitely on the list. Let's see.
What's the Badger's name, by the way, Moan?
I think it's Whiskey. No, I think it's Bucky Badger, if I'm correct. But
it's Bucky the Badger.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan Willie, for your super chats last night. I appreciate it. And then we had a big super chat from our friend Vox Quindaro, Kansas Jayhawk. Jayhawk squawk. You got a whole flock of Jayhawks. Rock chalk. Thank you, Vox Quindaro, for your super chat last night. Then we had one from our friend Corrigo Knowles. We go Noles. Corrigo Knowles.
Knowles, baby.
Knowles, baby.
Is that Carrie or Corey?
Carrie Go Knowles. Carrie Go Knowles. If I said Corey, I'm sorry, but
you want to smoke the marijuana? You don't like my marijuana.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. Man, I think I'm missing somebody. Jacobra Cat, thank you. I think I'm still missing somebody. Oh, Earl Carr. That was who I was missing. Earl Carr gave us 10 gifted memberships last night. I picked up a cougar tail for you, Earl Carr, so thank you very much.
That's baller right there.
All right, let's say hello to some people here in chat. I think I got all the sounders and media assets out of the way. Any new super chats tonight? Super stickers, memberships. You guys can give all those through the little cash icon on the chat window. It helps us keep the lights on here at the College Football Mafia Network. Keeps us in high cotton and good whiskey. Say hello to some people here in the chat. Bob Swanger, Penn State Nittany Lions, says, hey, everyone. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey.
Jan Hulk, all the way from Slovenia. Good to see you, Jan. Thank you for joining us. I don't know what time it is there, but thank you for joining us. Daniel Kopcha says, hello, all. Good to see you, Daniel Kopcha, fellow Buckeye. Conundrum, Mr. Hawkeye, says, your mark opens the private equity floodgates and ruins college football for everybody. What a jerk. Well, that's certainly an opinion. That is a take. Look at this. We've got already some gifted memberships here from our friend Bill G. BYU Cougar. Give him a little cougar.
Give him that cougar tail.
Actually, we did the cougar tail. Let's give him something different. Let's give him the actual. There we go.
Is that Cosmo? That's Cosmo in real life.
He's licking his lips looking at that cougar tail. So thank you so much for the gifted memberships, Bill G. Dan Lee RT, Mick Stevens, Don McCloy were all gifted those memberships from Bill G. If you guys are in chat, make sure you thank Bill G. If you're watching on demand, make sure you go ahead and thank him in the comments section. I want to personally thank Bill G. I'm sure Wild Ute does as well, for all the stuff he does for our community. He's a great contributor, and we appreciate him greatly. Just as a side note, I believe with those memberships, we've unlocked another emote tier here on the College Football Mafia Network. So we will get a new emote coming out. There was a new emote posted this week. Let them milk.
What? Let the milk?
Let them milk. You know how
are you trying to pull something out here, Moan? I have no idea where you're going. The new emotes here. Let them milk.
We've got new emotes in the chat. So Mafia milk, Mafia milk, Mafia milk. Thank you again, Bill G, for your generous donation of those memberships. It is much appreciated. And we will get a new emote out there for you. I don't know what emote we're going to do next. Let's get some ideas in the chat, guys. What emote do you want to see for the members next? Let's see some member opinions.
We got a Mafia drink, though, Georgia Tech style from Bill G.
There we go.
That's an easy request to fill right there.
That's an easy request. We'll play a little music for it.
Oh,
Like all the Italian fellows, I drink my whiskey beer. I'm a red drink from Georgia Tech and a hell of an engineer.
Thank you, Bill G. Oh, that's good whiskey.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
You're right, Bill
It's
G.
Mountain time. It is. It is 5 o'clock Mountain time.
Absolutely is. Where did I leave off here? Caleb Ramirez is in the house. Thank you, Caleb, a fellow Buckeye. Got some Buckeyes here tonight. Good to see it. Scavin, yes. Hello, gentlemen. Go Big Red. Have to get some Husker assets up here. BYU football says, what's up, guys? I might want to take that Cougar down. Yeah, Cougar's probably getting me a little nervous. That's Shonsky. That's our friend Shonsky. Thanks for showing up, Shonsky. Joaquin Morales. Hey, Wild Ute Moan and CFM fam. Been a minute since I've caught a live show. Don't forget to smash that like button, folks. Absolutely. If you want to help us out, smash that like button. Go ahead and share the video to your friends and family. And leave comments for us. Those all help us out in the algorithm. Much appreciated, sir. Fellow Sun Devil, Antoine Johnson is here. He says, hey, all. Good to see you. Nathan Campbell says, hi, guys. Good to see you, Nathan. Caleb Ramirez says, Greg's show just ended. Okay. Don in Kansas. Hello from Kansas. Boy, Don, I don't know if you saw that Jayhawk flock from earlier, but we had a Jayhawk flock in here with a Jayhawk squawk.
I don't know how you make this stuff, Moan. That's amazing stuff.
I don't make it. I have a site where I can go get these things, and then I get those things. And I just resize them. Daniel Kopcha, thank you, Wild Ute, for your brilliance with the Wild Ute University videos. And hope Moen has a happy birthday this weekend. Thank you, sir. I will remember you while I'm celebrating, and then I'll forget everything. Probably. I think we're just going to stay in. I've made the decision to stay in, watch wrestling, get a pizza, have a little whiskey, get a little frisky.
That sounds like a nice birthday.
That's going to be my birthday. And I will see you on Sunday. So I will be here on Sunday this week. Let's see. Moen, do you think Syracuse is a part of this? We will talk about that. Absolutely talk about that. AMAC says, howdy, y'all. Good to see you, AMAC. Immaculate says, big money, big money, big money. Stop. I need to get the press your luck thing going around the border here for that. That one might be a little more difficult, but we'll see what we can do. Thanks for stopping by, Immaculate. Noel Ramirez, ZPR. Noel Ramirez, PR. I think it's Noel Ramirez, and he's Puerto Rican. Hit the like button. Or he's in public relations, maybe. I don't know. Stormy Cyclones. Hi, guys. How about a Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown emoji? We can do that, but I want to thank you, Stormy Cyclone. I saw you in open lines last night. Unfortunately, we didn't get to you. but I did add a little something special just for you, sir. Cyclone Power.
Whoa, that is sweet.
Thank you again for being such a good guy, Stormy Cyclone, and supporting us. And if we do open lines tonight, I'll try to get to you as much as possible. It's just we got bombarded last night. It was crazy. John Dry says, so now it looks like there will be a Power 3. Don in Kansas says the Jayhawk flock looked fantastic, Mo, and thank you. That is every single Kansas Jayhawk mascot since time immemorial. Mr. Monkey says, say my name. Now, I don't have the Heisenberg disguise on tonight. I guess
Mr. Monkey's a KU guy, though, isn't he? Yeah, Mr. Monkey's KU.
Yeah, last night I was wearing the Heisenberg outfit. I had my pork pie on and my wraparounds. And Lurker ERS, hello from New Hampshire. Go Cyclones. What?
Ooh.
Was that another Iowa State Cyclones? Wow.
100%.
We're getting more of them in here. We're getting a lot of Iowa fans. We've got Conundrum and Immaculate representing the Hawks. We've got, here's Vox Quindaro. Rock Chalk Fellers. I don't know if you saw it earlier, so I'm going to throw it up again for you, Vox Quindaro, for your generous super chat last night. Here is the Jayhawk flock with the Jayhawk squawk.
Man, I love that Jayhawk, that first one with the long legs right there. Isn't it like that?
Well,
it's priceless.
Just going to let a little leak out here, guys. Working on new branding for the Big Freaking Friday show. That'll premiere next week. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Some really cool stuff. I was working on the intro video today, and it's really, there's some cool stuff in there. Thank you, Lurkers. I haven't seen you around recently. If you would consider giving us a subscribe on the YouTube channel, that'd be appreciated. Thank you again, Vox Quindaro, for your generous super chat last night. Hope you enjoyed the Jayhawk flock and the Jayhawk squawk. Rock Chalk Jayhawk squawk flock. Try and say that 5 times fast. You don't even have anything for Iowa, but you make a Cyclone license plate. Who says I don't have anything for Iowa?
Do you have something for Iowa, Moan?
Who says? Yeah, you never know.
Man.
I missed it, but I replayed it for you, brother. You've got it. You've got it. Mr. Monkey says Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Lee says, thank you to Bill G for the membership. Yes, thank you, Bill G. And thank you, Lee, for giving him a thank you. That is much appreciated. Tech rules, John Dry says. I don't know which tech you're talking about, John. There's so many technical institutes. Got to be specific.
I think it's Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech? Okay. I like Georgia Tech. We'll go with it.
Tech does rule. I can't wait to get into some of the subject matter too, Moan. I've got a special treat for you and the rest of the audience here, some prepped material no one's seen before on the ACC and Big East merger, and I'm just licking the chops to get into that soon.
It's going to be infotainment tonight, guys. You're going to get some information. You're going to get some tainment. Jeff Fuller says, sup, guys? Good to see you, Jeff. A adjunct professor in Wild Ute University. Rock Chalk 94. At this point, RedBird is to add UConn and Gonzaga and top 8 ACC. No other reason for it. Your mark going for blood after House either goes through or collapses.
Sawyer, that is a heck of a call right there. 10 schools.
Sergeant Pickles says, good evening, guys. Pickles game database is nearly complete. Can't wait to see it.
Absolutely.
Stormy Cyclone says, I have 3 of the plates mowing. Dan STK, Big 12, Ford FX4. Okay. I've got a
Wait, you've got a Big 12 license plate? Stormy? Is that true?
I've got a mowing license plate.
Well, if you've got a real Big 12 license plate, that's valuable stuff.
My license plate says mowing, so everybody knows who it is. Vox Quindaro says it brings a tear to his eye. I'm glad you like that. That is now a permanent fixture on the Big Freaking Friday show. Vox Quindaro dropping a little history. The long-legged Jayhawk, 1912, kind of belongs to KU basketball and volleyball.
Yeah.
Rock Chalk 94 says Texas State and St. Mary's to the pack. I don't know if that's wishful thinking or if that's reality.
Mo, do you still think the AAC is a better position than the Pac-12? Have you changed your stance on that over the
No,
last few weeks?
I still think the AAC is in a much better position.
Mm.
Vox Quindaro, thank you for stopping by, sir. We had a lot of bird-related people in chat because, I mean, Iowa State, they're the Cyclones, but their mascot's a bird. We've got Hawkeyes. We've got Jayhawks. RedBird Capital.
Yeah. That's
Big
right. The
12.
RedBird Capital's bringing them in.
We got a lot of them. So,
We do.
Laura Weiss, Texas Tech Red Raider is here. Hey, y'all.
Hey,
Good
hey.
to see you, Laura. Oh, trying to roll through here, make sure we got everybody. Do they do call-ins on Friday nights? I haven't talked with Wild Ute in too long. If we have time,
let's open that up. Mo.
If we have time, we will do open lines. We do that towards the end of the show, Ute. And I'll have to upload the Willy blocker, so nobody shows their Willy on screen. So
What was that? Is that realignment master, right? Realignment master blocker.
Yes. If anybody wants to show their unfortunately what God gave them, we have to put the Willy blocker up. And unless we trust you, if I trust you, we'll take the Willy blocker down. But
I think
let's
that
get
we're good with immaculate.
immaculate. I trust. I trust you, immaculate. But I want to make sure it's immaculate first too, because anyway,
we don't want to see the immaculate.
Let's jump in with the tweet from Ross Dellinger yesterday, and we'll work that in there. Big 12 presidents and AD reviewed bids from 3 finalists in the league's pursuit of a capital partner. Firms are proposing to infuse millions to schools. RedBird Capital has emerged as the leader. A decision is expected in the coming weeks. Ross Dellinger further clarifies this is a capital proposal, not equity. A report last summer about the Big 12's pursuit of a private equity deal with CVC was premature. That deal never reached the final stage because of hangups. CVC is not a part of the group of finalists, sources tell Yahoo Sports. We mentioned it last night on last night's emergency episode, but I'll mention it again. RedBird Capital has several ventures with sporting groups, and they also have a joint venture with Weatherford Capital, who is run by former Florida State quarterback Drew Weatherford, called Collegiate Athletic Solutions. I do not know if CAS is a part of this or if this is RedBird exclusively. But I want to get your thoughts. We got Kuz was so gracious to join us last night. Daniel Gygax was gracious to join us last night. They gave us a West Virginia perspective. You're a Utah Ute. You are now a Big 12 man, like it or lump it. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so a lot of thoughts on private equity. And those thoughts are fluid. They've actually changed over the last day. The more thinking about this from a conference standpoint, what it means for all the players in the conference, all the Big 12 members. Like, it's pretty polar, really, and divisive, actually, private capital, because what private capital really means for the Big 12 is that there needs to be a doubling down of commitment into the conference. Okay. From like, if you look at brass tacks and everything, there's a lot of benefits that we'll talk about and everything, but there has to be a commitment, basically a signing of a grant of rights 2.0 for every single school in the Big 12 to do a deal, a conference-wide deal with private equity, especially if it's a significant deal and not just some small deal that's insignificant. So that means that KU, that means that Texas Tech, that means that Utah, that means that BYU, that means Oklahoma State, and all of the schools, TCU, that might have options one day to get into the so-called Power 2 are going to have to make a choice. And are we going to double down? Are we going to go all in on the Big 12 and sign an additional document in addition to the existing 99-year membership agreement for the media rights and sign on the dot of private equity? Are we going to fully commit to this thing, or are we too uncomfortable with that because we're looking for an opening possibly in the next 5 years to get into the P2, if that's realistic or not? Like, let's get real about the soul of this thing. That's basically what's going on at the deepest level. Every single school is going to have to sign off on a private equity deal. It's not just the conference. Seriously, Redbird's not going to invest money and just say, hey, Big 12, just grab whoever you want. If everybody leaves, we're all good and everything. No, they want commitments. They want cost certainty with the schools that are in the conference. So every single member of the conference is going to have to sign on board the sucker and recommit to the conference. And that means if you do get a Power 2 opportunity, that you're going to have to pay out of the original 99-year agreement and possibly a private capital deal too, which is incredibly expensive probably. And so there's risk here if you think you're a school that has an opportunity to leave the Big 12. And I know a lot of Big 12 folks don't want to see that, but that's absolute real talk here. It's real talk. And so I think from the root of it, every single school in the Big 12 needs to reassess and ask themselves that question, like, hey, are we going to double down and go all in on the Big 12 conference and make this thing the best conference that we can here? And can we commit to this thing in the longer term and not just be kind of year to year hoping for a Power 2 invite? That's the first thought. What do you think of that, Moan?
Well, one, we don't know the particulars of the deal.
Sure.
I doubt. Listen, you've already got a 99-year agreement. How much more do you want in terms of an extension? I mean, 99 years is a pretty good extension. I think that, look, there's always going to be, and I mentioned it last night, between the Big 12 and the ACC, it's not a smorgasbord for the Power 2. There are a handful of schools from those two conferences that would be desired for the Power 2. In the Big 12, I think Kansas is number one. Colorado is number two. And probably one of the Texas schools is number three. Outside of that, and, no disrespect to Utah. I love Utah. I think they got a great brand. I think they fit into the Big Ten's shoe. I just don't think that there's enough value in a Utah for the Big Ten. Kansas could go either way with the SEC or the Big Ten. If the Big Ten absolutely needed to get into Texas and Texas A&M wasn't available to them, a Texas Tech or a TCU could be on the table. I used to be a never Texas Tech guy, but I think with all the money they're putting towards it, if they could get the academics up, that Texas Tech is a viable property. I don't think that this is, and let's be clear, because I misspoke several times last night and had to correct myself. This is a capital investment. This is not equity.
Yeah, you can't buy into equity in a nonprofit organization like these schools are. It's impossible to have an equity position in these.
It's capital. So, I mean, there's probably going to be a way for schools that can get out. It might be a penalty they have to pay, something like that. But I don't see some of these schools agreeing to sign themselves away for another ironclad 20 years. I just don't see it. And I don't think that's realistic to expect from some of these schools in the Big 12. I mean, I understand not wanting to lose your schools, but if there's a path forward for them to get into the Power 2 someday, I think you have to just accept that and let them move on. But again, I don't think that there's a huge demand for most of these schools out there. I can see the Big 10 stopping at 20. I can see the SEC would ideally, I think, like to stop at 18. So I don't think the ACC and Big 12 are going to be obliterated. Just my opinion on that.
Mm-hmm. Do you see how it's a risk, though, if you are a school that thinks that you might have an avenue, signing another agreement in addition to a 99-year membership agreement with the Big 12, signing a private equity deal that's contingent upon every school remaining in the conference? Do you understand how there could be a lot of penalties that are stiff penalties that are doubling essentially when you're doing that? And so it might create a situation where you don't have the funding available to leave. Does that make sense? That's the whole big idea, number one. I don't think it's getting discussed enough. I think that's a huge deal.
Okay. And again, we don't know the particulars of the deal. We don't. So we can't say that that's an absolute, it's a likely probability. We can't say it's an absolute, though. And like I mentioned last night, this is a situation where, yeah, there's risk, but there's reward. There is reward here, guys. And I brought up the example last night, and Greg concurred with me. Brett Yormark took a lot of risk when he signed that media deal to get in front of the Pac-12. There was a huge risk that just behind him, the Pac-12 was going to sign this $50 million deal for each school. And the Pac-12 would look, or the Big 12 would look foolish. But at the end of the day, he took the risk. He reaped the reward. He ended up getting Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State as members of his conference. And those were huge gets for him. Colorado's ratings numbers, Arizona State made the college football playoff. You've got Arizona, who's a big brand in basketball. Huge win for him. I think this is another huge win for Yormark if he pulls this off. He gets in front of the ACC on private capital. He gets in front of them. And the ACC can't do anything. They're in gridlock because of these lawsuits from Florida State and Clemson.
It's an absolute masterpiece from Yormark.
Yes,
it's a masterpiece. Just bringing this opportunity to the table is brilliant. Like, so you need to state that. And like, in the first big point was that every school has to make the decision. Are they in or not? Yeah. If they're not in, then there's not going to be cohesion here, and the deal's not going to be as significant as it could be. That's the idea. Maybe you get a small deal. Then if you leave in the future and stuff, no big deal. But if you want to make this substantial, which it could be, then you really need to double down and say the Big 12's where we're planning on being for 20 years. And that's a new philosophy for some schools.
And I agree with you, and I understand that. Kansas is probably going to be the one that would hold out. But
sure.
I think for them to release this information, everybody is on board. Yes. I don't think there's anybody who's not on board at this point. I think everybody said, okay, we're on board. Let's get this done. Let's get this deal. Let's get this money in here. Now there's, differing opinions on what that money is going to be put towards. I personally believe it's going to be put a lot towards the rev share and making sure that the Big 12 can compete at the highest level. Immaculate is of a different opinion. He believes some of it's going to be put to acquire ACC schools. Right. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but this is one of those intangible things that Yormark is great at. He has created instability inside the ACC. He has. Because it's not the big schools that are Power 2 bound that need to be worried about this. It's the smaller school. It's the Louisvilles. It's your Virginia Techs. It's your Pitts. It's your Syracuse that now have to wonder, hey, the Big 12, we're kind of neck and neck right now. We're a little ahead in media rights revenue, but we're pretty close neck and neck. Private equity, private capital coming in there, we're not going to be neck and neck.
Not at all.
They're going to outpace us. And
we've already breaking out. Yeah. Go ahead.
That is seriously dangerous for the ACC.
It's
seriously dangerous.
So thought two here, this was the big thing that flipped the mindset of this, is originally just thinking that the upfront pot of money. So really what's going on here, everybody, and like a lot of you know this, but I'm just going to lay it out in my own words. The Big 12 is exchanging, think of it this way, exchanging for a huge pot of money up front, a percentage of a future revenue source or stream. That could be merchandising, that could be ticket sales for the Big 12 championship, that could be for corporate sponsorship agreements, a portion of the future sales for like a corporate sponsorship agreement, a portion of the money that comes in would go to the private equity firm for this private capital deal. It's actually technically called a revenue sharing private equity, private capital structure, Moan, believe it or not. I know we got revenue sharing in the house settlement, but it's a revenue sharing structure, private capital wise. So the first thought is, well, that's great and stuff because you get the upfront money, but then down the line, it's going to actually bleed your profitability, your future potential, because they're going to take more and more of your potential revenues down the line, your future revenues. That was the original thought that I had. But reading more about this and understanding more, the actual proposal correct me if I'm wrong, Moan, is based on new revenue streams that the Big 12 currently doesn't have. That's what the agreement's going to be. So the revenue streams that the Big 12 might be considering, might never have considered because they aren't a private equity firm. But we're talking about brand new sources of money that aren't currently rolled up into the financial reporting of a Big 12 school or the conference. Is that your understanding as well?
So I was informed of this information yesterday afternoon, and the way it was explained to me is that this is more about the partnership between RedBird and the Big 12.
Sure.
This is the Big 12 wants somebody to basically invest in the future viability and success of the Big 12. RedBird Capital does that for them, and they do that through licensing intellectual property rights. Now, what are those rights? We don't know yet. Could be lots of things. Could be naming the conference rights. And Daniel Gygax brought it up last night. Well, the Big 12 could farm that out themselves. They could, but having a private capital company that's networked with everybody you need networked in media is going to get you a much better deal. So you can say, okay, we'll sell it to Allstate for $30 million. Meanwhile, a private equity firm can probably shop that out, come up with some new deals for you, and sell it to Nationwide for 50. And just, you maybe have to change the motto to the Big 12 as Nationwide. And
they'll take their cut.
And they'll take a cut out of it. They will take their cut, but you'll make more money. Yes, you have somebody skimming off of you. I compared it last night. It's much like the movie Casino with Robert De Niro. The mob takes over the casino. They skim a little off the top. The casino still makes money. And if anybody screws around, they take them in the back and bust their hand with a hammer. And that's what it is. They want a partner. They want somebody to invest in the Big 12. They want a partner. This will be a partner for them. These guys are going to be thinking of ways to make money that nobody's even thinking about yet.
And that's the big thing here is like, we're not talking about existing revenue streams. We're talking about new intellectual property, whatever you want to call that, basically whatever they can muster up to monetize a revenue stream. So it's not like you're going to be losing out on any money that you're making today. This is all just adding money to the pot and stuff. That's going to be a portion of the money that's going to be added. They're going to skim on the top like we're talking, but it's actually going to make your athletic department more money in the future, in addition to paying you upfront money to do the deal. So that actually, from a conference-wide perspective, like you're bringing more money in that's currently not available to you because you don't have minds like private equity thinking about ways to monetize your business. That's smart business. That's why you do it. In a couple ways, when I hear intellectual properties, that's the first thing that came to mind too, is what Gygax was saying, the Allstate 12, corporate naming rights for like the name of the Big 12 conference, called the Allstate 12. And if you can work out a nice deal and stuff, then the private equity firm's going to get paid yearly, maybe monthly on that deal. You're going to skim their portion. Here's another big one, Moan, gambling.
Yeah, gambling info.
Working with fantasy sports gambling. Do you know how much they can make if they open up a revenue stream with the Big 12 and gambling and some type of communication going on in game? Do you know how much we've heard about that? Pac-12 was considering that for years, never got it done. There's a huge potential there that the Big 12 has not tapped into. They might not. Private equity certainly will tap into that, and they'll skim. They'll skim off that too. You can think of endless sources of how to make money that the Big 12 is currently not doing, and they're going to do that. They're going to have the partners. They're going to have the funding sources to make money in every way imaginable. And they're going to skim here, there. So they're going to be making money. But it's all in addition to what you're bringing in today. And you're not leveraging anything you're bringing in today with those revenue sources that you'd be committing to. That's why I think that the Big 12 should support it.
And I think you might be right. That might be exactly why they're supporting. And I will bring this up. If you didn't catch it earlier today, it was announced Texas A&M just signed a huge 15-year, $550-some million multimedia rights deal with, I believe, Playfly is the name of the company. Now imagine, and that's for multimedia rights. That's all kinds of things, website stuff, YouTube channels, all that kind of stuff. All of that falls under multimedia rights, coaches shows, stuff like that. Imagine somebody being able to negotiate that on a conference level for you.
Yeah. Right.
That could
That's
be
why you
huge.
need all the members to sign on. You have to have the certainty of the members being involved in that deal, and it's significant. And so you do have to commit to the conference. Going back to like big idea number one, that's the crux of this whole thing.
Yeah.
But like you can monetize the crap out of it. And like we're talking about the ACC versus Big 12 media rights. We've broken out on this channel before how close that really is when you're looking at the bare bone contracts. These revenue sources, if you change name to Allstate 12, then you get private equity to open up a gambling way, like a method of making money. Then all of a sudden you could bring in $10 million per school, easy, and you're not even losing anything, and you're getting an upfront bag to do the deal. And all of a sudden you jump the ACC.
Absolutely. And one of the ways they do that is sell data to these gambling companies. These gambling companies love data and statistics. It's how the house always wins. They know everything.
Right.
And you can work a deal with gambling houses that say, we will sell you exclusively our data up to the minute during a game. So they can actually on the fly change odds and statistics based on the statistics of a game for same game parlays, in-game action, all that kind of stuff. And we all know how much online sports books have taken off across the country. They are huge. You pretty much can't go to any site anymore without seeing a FanDuel ad or Bet Team or MGM, Bet MGM, whatever it's called. So there's lots of different new futuristic things. There's things we haven't even figured out yet that these guys want to get locked in on. So 5 years ago, that betting thing that didn't even exist. I mean, there was only Las Vegas and New Jersey and New York, I think, had sports betting, and now I think 20 some states have sports betting, and you've got offshore betting too. So
absolutely. So you have the first mover's advantage if you work with private equity who gets into that world first. And so that's an advantage. You're established in it. You're the first mover. And so there are huge advantages, and that's why this is brilliant from Yormark's perspective to even bring this to the table. Let's talk about the dark side of it. Okay, I mean it's all rosy, but think about over the long term. Okay, like we're going in like not just a year, not just 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Ultimately, the end aim of a private equity firm in a private capital structure would be, in my view, to get the media rights when they unhinge, right? When they unbind, to put them out to the market, to sell them off, to siphon them off, whatever they want to do to maximize money on the conference media rights for football and basketball. And so there's going to be a long-term perspective from a private capital source and stuff to keep being a partner and everything to make sure they land that. And I think the more you go along with a private capital company, so private equity company provides the capital, the more dependent you become on them too. So like if you're getting $10 million next year from private capital because they're bringing in all these different revenue sources, you get used to that money, right? You need that money. You're going to budget for that money. In the future and stuff, you basically milk them more and more and become more dependent on them that there becomes a point in time where they kind of have you by the balls. And they say like, hey, if you're so dependent on private equity for funding your athletic department, they can, upon a restructure, upon a contract extension from private equity to the conference or school level, they can actually get more margin on you too, because you're more dependent on them. So you become over time more dependent on a source like this, in my view. And so what does that look like in the future? I don't know. But is that a risk? Certainly, because you're losing control and autonomy over time to a private equity firm.
Certainly a risk, but I think the reward outweighs the risk in this situation.
Agreed.
I think you're looking at the precipice of the House getting passed. We've got congressmen now, senators standing up there and saying they want to get this legislation done and get that antitrust exemption to the NCAA. So, look, you're on the precipice. It's like we said earlier with the Pac-12 deal, high risk, high reward. You get in there. You get in front of the ACC with private capital. Now you can make sure that everybody in your conference can max rev share. You make sure that you're getting more money than ACC schools are. In addition to that, as an added bonus, your main competition is the ACC, whether you want to admit it or not. ACC and Big 12, you're in competition with each other. You guys aren't in competition with the Big 10 and the SEC. That race is run. The Big 10 and the SEC are the de facto power two. They've negotiated their deals. They're going to negotiate a new deal that's going to pay them even more without private capital. You're not running a race against those guys. You're running a race to be number 3. And right now, it's the ACC, and they're lined up against the Big 12. And the Big 12 does not have any. I mean, the biggest brands in the Big 12 are Kansas and Colorado right now. Kansas for basketball, Colorado, BYU would be another one, Arizona. But the ACC still has Florida State and Clemson and Miami and Notre Dame and North Carolina. The Big 12's already fighting from behind in this race. If this gives you a little bit of an advantage, if this gives you a lap on them, you got to take it. Got to take it. Have to take it, guys. Got to take it. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think your nails on it. You do have to take it, and I think ultimately they will take it based on the things that we've talked about, right? New revenue sources open up, more money coming in, upfront money dumped on you. It's just basically a big pile of cash that comes at a cost, of course, because they're going to make money. I mean, private equity firms they know how to make money, and they will get theirs, and they're going to get more control down the line. That's what you're giving up, though. That's not being talked about. You're giving up more control of your conference and your autonomy. So, look, that's just like the pros and cons of it. But to stay relevant, to stay healthy, I think that you have to do it too.
All right, let's. We're going to go ahead and we're going to kind of move the goalposts a little. We're not moving it down the way all the way, but we're going to talk a little bit about the Big East and the ACC. That was a news story that came out earlier this week. And we're going to start with this tweet from Ross Dellinger. This is again from last night. At a function in D.C. tonight, Big East Commissioner Val Ackerman says that she expects some D1 universities to drop out of participating in RevShare within the year. There will be a continual quote-unquote realignment of those that can support competitive RevShare and those that cannot. The great split of college athletics is more near than ever before. The incremental crawl to the split has accelerated over the years, at first with NIL and now with RevShare. Very interesting she brought those points up in light of the rumor earlier this week about a Big East ACC merger. Fortunately, we've got somebody on the show named Professor Wild U, who has crunched the numbers, taken the data, put it through a strainer, thrown it in a blender, pounded it out, hit it with the rolling pin, threw some flour on it. He's taken this every which way but loose, and he's going to share that information with us. So I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ACC and Big East merger discussion and everything. Mo, can we pull that article up, because that's going to happen. That's going to parlay into this entire discussion too. So Front Office Sports a few days ago put out an article that spoke to the potential idea. This is just an idea, folks. This isn't a guarantee. This is just a thought experiment here. Merger between the Big East Conference and the ACC. And this thing really was mostly supported by Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K of Duke, who's now not even part of the Duke athletic program. But he has fond memories of the Big East, it seems. and then also some other personalities from the Big East, and Val Ackerman from the Big East, who's the commissioner too. There's different snippets of comments. But essentially the gist is that Krzyzewski thinks it's a good idea for the ACC, as far as the basketball arm of the ACC, to merge together with the Big East in basketball. The Big East doesn't have football. So this would be basically be basketball and maybe other sports, but non-football. And kicking the tires on that idea because of the regionality, because of the historical matchups. That's the whole idea of this article. And the article speaks to, hey, what are some of the potential outcomes here? Could it be a scheduling agreement, really weighing it back and forth? How realistic is this for the ACC and the Big East? Kind of a fascinating article and stuff, but it doesn't come to a conclusive point. And there's no evidence here that Jim Phillips or anybody that's inside the ACC or any school would be supportive of this too. So it's more kind of like a speculation piece almost. Is that your take of it, Moan?
Yeah, I mean, this is thought experiment, think tank kind of stuff.
Yes.
The ACC, it's basically everybody is looking for more revenue, guys. Everybody, not just the Big 12, the Big 10 and the SEC. Look, those guys hated each other. I mean, there were no bigger rivals than the Big 10 and SEC. They are now breaking bread so each of them can get more revenue. That is huge. So the ACC, you know, you're going to get a lot of these proposals that think outside the box is a way to generate revenue. And I'm sure for the Big East, they're looking at it saying, hey, we need to protect our basketball brands. So we need to get as much money in here as we can for rev share. For the ACC, they're saying, well, maybe we can boost our basketball numbers, having, you know, a more competitive conference by adding these Big East schools in basketball only. You look at the Pac-12 adding Gonzaga. You look at the Mountain West adding Grand Canyon. So, I mean, there's these schools out there that are being added as basketball only in hopes of boosting it. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thought experiment, but I don't know the figures are going to work out for the benefit of the ACC by any means. But it's I mentioned it last night. It's interesting that article came out, and I put the link there in chat, guys, if you want to read the full article. It's interesting that article came out Tuesday, I believe. And here we are Thursday night. You have this information dropping about the Big 12 private capital deal.
You ready to get into some numbers, Moan?
Let's crunch some numbers.
Let's talk about it. Okay. Big East and ACC merger, fantasy or reality, with my favorite question mark right there that Moan loves so much right in the middle right there for everyone to see. Okay, so what we're doing here is that we're actually looking at the media rights numbers for the Big East deal and also the ACC deal to see if there's a lot of separation that could add some benefit one way or the other, to see if this thing makes sense financially at all. That's the goal of this. Then we're going to talk about the pros and cons of a merger for the Big East and the ACC. That's where we're going. Let's jump into it. First off, I'm serious, y'all. This is it. So per Sportico, per a lot of different sources last year, the Big East signed a new TV deal, okay? They signed a TV deal where they get paid out $80 million annually for the conference for basketball. That's where they make their money. There's 11 schools in the Big East, and if you divide 80 by 11, that's about $7.3 million per year in guaranteed media rights for their Tier 1 content from Fox, TNT, and NBC for the Big East Conference. Again, when you break it out to 7.3 roughly per year, these reports too, some say that like there might be a little bit more juice in here too that hasn't been reported that could get this number somewhere up to 8 or 9 million, but certainly less than 10 million. We're going to go based on the numbers that are actually thrown out there. $80 million per year for the entire conference divided by 11. That is $7.3 million for basketball rights. Every Big East member. Got it? Stick that 7.3 number in your mind. Let's talk about the ACC numbers now, okay? So a lot of this came, these ACC numbers came from actually another show, Wildy University show I did with Jeff Fuller, that you can check out on the main channel and stuff that breaks out the media rights between the Big 12 and the ACC. And this might look familiar to you if you've seen that before. This is one of the slides and stuff. So I just wanted to give you a little background on where this came from. What we're doing here next is we're just removing the CFP payout because it's not really relevant to a basketball-only discussion about a merger. So here we go. Remove the CFP portion of the ACC media rights and their payouts, and looking at the ESPN Tier 1 numbers, which, again, we've broken out for the length of the contract, plus the estimated ACC network payout. And then if you add those two together, you get a total figure. Basketball rights are said to be, by this is common knowledge and everything, even Bob Thompson, former president of Fox, have said approximately 20% of any media rights deals basketball, men's basketball rights. Football is about 80%. There's a growth in women's basketball sports too that's going to have to be considered in the future. But right now it's about a proxy of an 80-20, 20% basketball, 80% football. So what's been done here is looking at every year the ACC payouts based on the tier 1 rights and the ACC network rights. If you take a 20% figure to each of those totals, then you get basically the basketball portion of the ACC media rights. Does that make sense, Bone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so look, it's for 2025, this is saying that the ACC schools from their basketball portion are making about $6.7 million. 2026, that's growing by 4.5%, roughly every year. So 6.8, 6.9, and going on till 2035, there's an estimated $8.2 million per school getting paid out based on the basketball portion of the media rights. That's important because we can actually put that together and compare that with the Big East contract now, okay? That's where we're going next. So let's take a look at the gap here. So ACC basketball only payouts, as seen on the previous slide there we discussed, for the next 6 years are laid out as seen to the left. And then the Big East number, which is a static number of estimating 7.3 per year based on the contract for the next 6 years, shows you that there's really no gap per school here. Like we're saying here that the Big East is actually making a little bit more money on its basketball rights than the ACC based on that 20% estimate, but it's less than $1 million per school. In fact, it's more like $500,000 per school per year. Like not going to move the freaking needle. And over the life of the 6-year contract, that's going to essentially erode and be the same and flat. Okay. So in other words, there really isn't any financial upside here at all based on like the contracts that have been signed and put in place for the next 6 years to 10 years.
You would basically, you'd have to unwrap the contracts.
Yeah.
And renegotiate them. And they'd probably want a renegotiation like before where they want it for a 15-year renegotiation where these teams are going to play each other and it's guaranteed and everybody has to sign on. And because, I mean, there'd be compelling matchups in North Carolina and Duke and Syracuse and some of the big brands in basketball in the ACC playing those Big East schools. But you're right. I mean, in fact, the Big East makes more money than the ACC does on basketball.
Isn't that incredible to look at?
And they have, I don't follow basketball. I think St. John's a Big East school?
Yes.
Okay. So I can name St. John's. I think Georgetown is a Big East school.
Correct. UConn.
UConn is a Big East school. Okay. But it's like you have to think about who these Big East schools are, even for their name brands. It's like the ACC, you can think North Carolina, Duke, Syracuse, Wake Forest has a good basketball program from time to time. There's really good basketball programs in there that it's shocking to me that the ACC basketball figures are actually less than the Big East basketball figures. It really is.
When you're doing the estimate like we've done, which is a fair way to look at it too. Yeah, that's exactly how it shakes out. It speaks to how bad the ACC contract is, as we all know, for one, and like they're not going to be able to re-up that for a while. And also that there's just not that much media rights in basketball. That's another big key takeaway here. And that even if you melded these two conferences together, you're just getting the same thing that you've got. There's not a lot of upside financially to do it. And so that takes us to really, looking for the Big East. What are the pros and cons really of doing this? From the Big East perspective, the pros are you are creating a basketball super conference. That's undeniable. Like in name only, I don't know if the payouts are going to reflect that as we've just talked about. So from the Big East perspective and stuff, shoot, you're linking up and you're making a conference with UNC, Duke, Virginia, Syracuse, Louisville. No brainer, right? If you can get in a basketball conference with them, absolutely do it. There's heightened prestige with playing those universities like a UNC and having them in conference with you. That's a no-brainer. And the only con that I see really from the Big East perspective is you're going to have to fly out to Cal and Stanford and SMU, whereas now like your travel's very limited to regionality, right? Up in the Northeast. So there's really one con, not a big con because you're not playing on the West Coast or in the South very often. So there's a lot more pros here for Big East. But again, it's not going to move the needle financially as we've already talked about. Now going to the ACC, it's a little bit more complicated. Okay, for the ACC, you are creating the basketball super conference. That's a win. And then as we saw with the payouts, maybe like a $500,000 million more dollars in the payouts, a bit more money, maybe. those are the pros. Like that's even questionable, but the cons are pretty significant. And this does not solve the root issue of the ACC, which is significantly less money than the Power Two. This does not solve that financial gap whatsoever. It's also going to upset your football only members. You can see them right there: Clemson, Miami, and Florida State going all in and focusing so much on basketball would just tick them off even more and show them that they need to get out even sooner, in my view, because you're going all in on basketball and focusing on basketball when it's not bringing much to the table. And then also with men's basketball rights, let's be honest about this moment too. I just don't see a lot of potential growth in men's basketball. I think women's basketball rights, you're going to see a lot more in the future. But I question like the growth potential in men's college sports. And like, so are you really focusing on the right thing if you're the ACC without focusing on football? I don't think so. I think it's a huge con too, and it sent the wrong message.
I think we would have to look at it, and maybe we can do this, look at basketball viewership numbers on a trend to see how well they're trending. But again, I don't want to get people too involved in viewership numbers, because viewership numbers are deceiving, guys. You can have 10 million viewers of a game, but advertisers want people that are going to buy their products. They want to get in front of those people. Those advertisers would much rather have a million viewer viewed game if those million viewers were the key demographic for them. So don't get too locked up on viewership numbers. I know it's easy to say, oh, look, they've got great viewership numbers, but it's also about who's viewing the games, so, and where they're viewing them from. So, but yeah, again, that it doesn't make sense to me. I saw it and I thought, okay, well, that you could do that. It's a thought. It's definitely a thought, but you know, got a super chat here from our friend Stormy Cyclone. Moen, you made my day with the plate emoji. They are identical in color and design to what I have. We'll throw it up there for you again. ISU. And you know what I'm saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Thank you for the super chat, Stormy Cyclone. Much appreciated, sir. We're gonna get to some.
What is that? What was that sounder?
You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying?
Where do you get that, Moan? South Park.
You know what I am saying. One of my favorite episodes of South Park. You know what I'm saying. Thank you for the super chat, Stormy Cyclone. It is much appreciated. Guys, I'm going to try to get to some comments here, but I want to do open lines. We'll get to a few comments, but anything that you want to absolutely have read is probably going to have to be a super chat. I'm sorry. We just got so many comments tonight. I was not anticipating this, but I will try and get through some comments. Rec Talk says Moen is a real one. What it do? What the business is? He is a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech, and a hell of an engineer, and a hell of a content creator too. Check out Rec Talk on YouTube, guys. One of the funnest content creators out there in the college football sphere. AMAC says there's no path for anybody to leave the ACC. I agree with you. There's no path right now. But adding instability, man. Putting fear in people. FOMO.
FOMO is a real thing. And every day that it gets cheaper to buy out of the ACC. And sooner or later, there's a breaking point where you get out. Like every single day goes by, it's a few bucks cheaper.
Absolutely. Rock Chalk 94 says private capital is actually a better option than private equity.
Yeah. Yes.
Steel Austin says, where is it reported about an extension to the grant of rights?
That is I'm not going to say speculation. I guess my expert judgment. I work in the financial industry. I've been working in the financial industry for 15 years. Look, guys, there's no way that You're going to sign a deal with the Big 12 conference if the schools have an opportunity to leave. They're throwing the structure that's being talked about is they're throwing a bunch of upfront money into the Big 12 schools to have access to these revenue streams. You can't just let your investment just walk out the door. You need everybody to sign on and recommit to the Big 12. So I'm calling it Gore 2.0 as far as a private equity deal and stuff. There is a grant of rights for the media rights that the Big 12 has in addition to what we're talking about here.
BYU football, Shonsky. Moen, I think somewhere reported that the Big 12 schools would most likely be BYU, Arizona State, and Texas Tech get invited. Hey, I hate to break it to you, BYU fans. The Big Ten's never going to invite BYU because of some of the religious reasons, the same reason the Pac-12 wouldn't invite BYU. Texas Tech, Arizona State. You're right. Arizona State's probably one I forgot that should be mentioned. But yeah, sorry, BYU fans. I just don't see a spot for you in the Big Ten. I don't think the SEC would want that either, but that's fine. BYU won a national championship before being independent. I mean, let them be the big brand in the Big 12. Steele Austin says the Big is going to add some more Western brands to help out the former 4-pack schools that are hurt by all of the travel. Will they add just 2 more Western schools, 3 or 4 more? Who knows? Great point, Steele. I've said it before. I think the Big Ten might add 1 more Western school. I think if the Big Ten could get Notre Dame and Stanford, they would be happy to stop at 20. If they're going to push to 24. Here's the thing. I think with this SEC big scheduling agreement, partnership, whatever we're going to call it, is it going to be stay out of our backyard? If the SEC doesn't want the Big Ten in their backyard, they're not going to have a Texas school. They're not going to have a Florida school. They're not going to have a Georgia school. More than likely not going to get a North Carolina school. They're not going to get a Virginia school. So you're right. They might have to go look out more out towards West if they want to go above and beyond 20. But I think they would be happy if they just got Stanford and Notre Dame. John Dry says, I think college basketball is the best basketball, men's and women's. Yeah, I'm not a basketball guy, so.
Yeah, nor am
I. Tawtown Hawk says, did you do the Big 12 basketball cash for comparison?
I didn't break it out, but it would be pretty similar to the ACC payouts because the ACC is making on their base much similar to the Big 12. It might be a little bit more than the ACC, depending on what you're looking at, but it's going to be in the realm, too, of exactly what the Big East is making and the ACC is making. Big 12's right there, guys.
David Floyd, Big 12 used the money to pay the buyouts for Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and UNC, then demand for playoff slots and equal playoff money as the Big 10 and SEC. I don't even think this private capital money is going to private capital deal is going to have the money required to do all that, David. Talking like $500 million.
I agree. I love the bombastic nature of this comment, though. Like it's in the perfect world, the Big 12 would get enough private capital to convince FSU, Clemson, and Miami to join the conference, and then sign them to a long grant of rights and be one happy family, be the third super conference, and make way more money and compete with the SEC and the Big Ten. I think that's exactly what like a lot of Big 12 fans want, and I get it. Like that does seem pretty enticing. Moen mentioned it though. Like if the buyout for the ACC is like $400 to $500 million per school, then you're looking at like 1.2 to 1.3 billion for those schools and buyouts, and that's more than this whole structure of the private equity deal. So not necessarily realistic with this, but I think a better way to entice them is actually just making tons of money through these revenue streams that you haven't opened up and selling FSU to jump over rather than just like getting the upfront money to buy them out. Maybe just store that away, let the gore for the ACC erode in value so it's not as expensive, then try to pull them over one day in the future, in the intermediate future.
Absolutely. And I spoke about it last night. Florida State and Clemson are huge winners in all of this. They really are.
Yeah.
Because they're still in the courts. Florida State had a favorable ruling this week. And now if the ACC wants to get a private capital deal done at a conference level, they've got to bring them in from the cold. So now Florida State and Clemson have significant leverage over the ACC, especially with the Big 12 on the verge of getting this done. Those schools in the ACC care about not falling behind the Big 10 and the SEC any more than they already are. Now they got to worry about falling behind the Big 12. And that's beneficial for Clemson and Florida State because now they have leverage. They can tell the ACC, okay, we'll come back. We want a guaranteed out date. We want a guaranteed figure. And we want to know all this stuff to come back on board. So good news for Florida State and Clemson, in my opinion.
You have to be so frustrated, as you mentioned earlier, Moan, if you're Virginia Tech, if you're Louisville right now, like you're not in the courts, you're seeing your fellow members sue the conference and not stop the suit after you put performance initiatives in the contract, which you hoped would solve this issue. It has not. They went out of the conference very vocally, and you see your rival conference, who you might actually have some inkling to want to join, because there probably will be an offer put out for Virginia Tech and Louisville, certainly from the Big 12 standpoint, if those two became available. And seeing exactly what's going on there has got to be incredibly frustrating, because you're sitting there and you're the kind of schools that are kind of getting milked by Florida State and Miami and Clemson and stuff for the performance-based, like branding, viewership branding stuff that's going on in the ACC. You're not going to be making as much money because you're more of that upper mid-tier brand. You're getting absolutely housed in this thing, and you're seeing your rivals just totally score it and stuff based on what's going on there. I would be losing my freaking mind if I were a Louisville fan right now, if I were a Virginia Tech fan. In fact, Louisville has had discussions with the Big 12, right? Back in discussions last year with the Big 12. We don't know how far those advanced, but if there's any wedge that wants the Big 12 in the ACC, it is the Cardinals, 100%.
Yeah, and I compared different situation than the Pac-12 and the ACC find themselves in. The Pac-12 is nearing the end of their grant of rights. Colorado. You said Colorado's not leaving the Pac-12, guys. Remember, there were people out there saying anybody who tells you different, Colorado's not leaving the Pac-12. They're not going anywhere. Why would they leave the Pac-12 to go to the Big 12? Colorado, I think, could see the writing on the wall. They said, hey, Texas, got a lot of recruiting options out there. More fit. We've got some traditional opponents out there. Stability. There's more stability in the Big 12 right now. Who's going to be
Is there
the
more
Colorado?
stability in the Big 12 than the ACC right now?
Well, I mean, if you're bringing in money and you've got two members in open revolt, they're in open revolt. They're suing your conference. They're saying, we want out and we are suing you. We know there's at least two teams, North Carolina being one of them, that are in quiet revolt that want out. They're not in the courts, but you know they want out.
Just think of all the drama in the ACC. Florida State and Clemson. You've got North Carolina. You've got the North Carolina State backpack politics and state there. You've got Stanford and Cal on the freaking West Coast traveling to every ACC match and losing their minds. It's horrible for those programs. And SMU out in like the middle of the country and stuff. There's some mad drama going on in the ACC in every little area of it. It's good times, man.
Yeah, listen, the thing that killed the Pac-12 more than anything else, poor leadership and not having a partner. Greg and I talked about it a little last night. You know, one of the things that hurt the Pac-12 more than anything was they built a network and they said, we're going to finance it all ourselves. We're going to control it, have 100% control of the profit. They also took on all the risk. They didn't have any experience doing it. They had to build all these production facilities. It more or less ended up bankrupting that conference and causing it to collapse. The Big Ten, Jim Delaney, partnered with Fox, people who knew what they were doing. And it made them the richest conference in college athletics several years down the road. The SEC did the same thing. They partnered with ESPN. It's about having partners. I think that's what this private capital is most important to take away from this private capital. It's a partner.
Moen, I think the story is timing too. If you recall, Pac-12 wanted to get private equity in the door to fund the Pac-12 network and distribute it. They couldn't get a deal done. They were 15 years ahead. If they were doing that today, that'd be brilliant. 15 years ago was foolish. Didn't work. So it's timing as well. I mean, like, seriously, they were ahead of their time and it blew up.
Yeah.
If you would have done that, I mean, ESPN and Fox wanted to hold the Pac-12 network. They could have sold it off to them, but they chose not to because they wanted to leverage it with private equity.
Didn't work.
Didn't
not
work.
Sometimes it's better to have somebody who's invested in your survival. Rockin' Rants here. He says, smash the like button, you filthy animals. Need to get that on the soundboard. Thank you, Rockin' Rant. Steel Austin says the Big would be interested in Miami. Again, as long as the SEC doesn't say not in my backyard, I think the Big would be interested in Miami. And that's got to lean heavy on schools like we mentioned, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Pittsburgh. Hey, guys, those schools probably have a landing spot. You guys don't. You better be using this time that you have wisely to figure out what you're going to do. And trust me, Colorado got paid an extra $1 million, I believe, to jump first. So I'm sure that the Big 12 is more than happy to offer whoever decides to jump some kind of incentive to do so. Steel Austin says there isn't a school left in Texas that the Big would be interested in. It would take for either A&M or Texas to leave the SEC for the Big, and that's about as unlikely as you would think. Disagree, Steel. Disagree. I think I used to be anti-Texas Tech, but I think Texas Tech has shown that they are willing to spend money and upgrades and get academics up and do a lot of things, and that's attractive to the Big Ten. You're right. They don't get a huge market in Lubbock, but they get carriage fees for the Big Ten network in the state of Texas, and that's a whole lot of carriage fees.
I would think that TCU would be a better prospect for Big Ten. Seem more Big Ten-ish than Texas Tech. Like, speaking
They're
of
a possibility too. They're a possibility too, but I'm not ruling out Texas Tech at this point. All right, guys, I'm putting the chat in there. If you guys want to join, we're going to do open lines. Sorry we couldn't get to more comments, guys. If you have something you absolutely want to have to be read, it'll have to be a super chat. Texas didn't win anything in the Big 12 for 15 years. True enough. Tempest says Arizona State took the flagship from Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Bold statement. Bold statement after only one season, but we'll see. Colorado is the biggest brand right now, and BYU is bigger than Utah right now. From the alternative hypothesis. I don't think Ute likes to hear that, but oh, whoops. Accidentally removed you.
Immaculate.
Could have added you. Immaculate, how's it going, sir?
Good, man. We're playing knockout. I'm knocking you out of here. Taking your spot. No, I'm just kidding. That's all they pushed you out. How you doing, man? Been a while since we talked.
What's up? How you doing?
Man, I saw this financial stuff pop up. I'm like, I know who I got to talk to.
What do you think of the breakout, Immaculate?
You know, I got a big question because I'm seeing diverging thoughts on this. Like
Right.
we were talking, and Moan was talking about it, and at the start of the talk, I had one opinion, and then Greg talked, and it's like, okay, so what do we have here? Well, Greg thinks it's like a rights deal. If I'm getting this right, where these guys are the ones that are going to come in and deal with all the rights and selling them and parsing them out. But we're also getting reports about the interest rate, right? 10 to 15%. That sounds like a different thing. What do you? We're talking about if they're going to take like rights for advertising and sponsorships and NIL rights for players and all these things that they might do. That's almost like a television rights deal where you're getting the contract to work all of this. And there's no loans coming from any television networks like this. So if you're getting percentage rate like this, doesn't that just sound more like a straight up loan?
This thing is behaving different than a loan, but it's similar to, like we had talked about, like I think the closest loan structure would be an unsecured loan, but it's different than that too, because so if you and I worked for the private equity firm offering a private capital deal, Immaculate, you and I would be doing our own research and analysis on the side before approaching Big 12 and say, hey, shoot, this gambling arm of the Big 12, they don't even have anything going right now, but we see like this thing can be making $1 billion a year. If we do if we do X, Y, Z, and we do that type of partnership with the Big 12, let's go and approach the Big 12 to get a piece of the action with gambling rights. Use the Big 12 name for the gambling rights, do it in game for football and everything else. And then we'll tell the Big 12, we'll structure the deal, no matter how much you make and stuff on the revenue on the sales side, that we're going to take a 10 to 15% cut, skim off that. So you and I would say, okay, Big 12, we're going to open up this new revenue channel you currently don't have with gambling, but here's the deal. We get 15, 20% of all the money that comes in, all the revenue that comes in, and that's our payment. Does that make sense?
So basically the folks who reported that little part don't know what they're talking about, because what you said makes sense to me. What they say when they call it like a 10 to 15% interest rate, that doesn't make sense to me, because that's straight up loan talk. So that's why I wonder if there's two parts to this.
There's not good language around it yet because it's so new, but so they're saying it's an interest rate, but the way to think about it, it's a revenue share percentage.
Correct. Right. That's what I'm saying. Like if that's the case, then it needs to be kind of clarified, because here's why. I think it makes more sense that this group comes in and offers to like sell rights and do that type of stuff, because there's so much growth in that. As you know, one thing is to bring up the A&M deal. I think that's absolutely due to this. Like, how do you get that big of a boost in pay? Well, it's because you've got so much more that's now available to them. Multimedia rights deal. You got players NIL rights that are now going to be put into that, sponsorships, who knows what. So for them to have that big of a boost, this is what we're looking at in this market. And that's what I would think that this is about. But if there's an active loan element to this, that's when I say we kind of have to keep our eyes open on this, that maybe this is more about asset acquisition at the same time. Because if you're taking a straight up loan, any business, right? This is right down your alley. If you're a business and you're taking a loan of considerable size, you're at some point in time doing asset acquisition, something to increase what you can do to bring in revenue at a higher rate than what you're going to pay out on that loan. Mm-hmm. So
that's the risk for the private capital firm, private equity firm, right? Like that's why I made the point that you need every single member of the conference to sign on to a long-term agreement, because like, hey, if everybody leaves the Big 12 tomorrow and I just gave them $1 billion up front, then I'm screwed on my deal with my gambling, revenue share deal. Like you have to have everyone committed. You have to do the analysis beforehand. Mm-hmm. So you have to get everyone committed and like it's signed on. So it's a Gore 2.0 doing this, Immaculate.
Probably. I mean, we don't have any reporting on it, but that makes sense to me. That like you're not just gonna be like give a long-term loan and then have the asset just go to crap. So
because there's no collateral behind it. It's an unsecured thing. Like you're just saying, hey, we take the rights to a revenue stream that has not been determined yet. It's our intellectual property. Meaning we can make up whatever we want.
Give you assets from a public university.
It's crazy. It's crazy, man.
And so, a couple of things real quick, and move on. But I really wanted to also bring up the Big East situation, because you went big into that. And to me, I don't do financial talk like you do. I never can, and I'll never be able to compare that. But what I do is timing and how bigger picture things may tie together. And for me, the Big East has been quiet. Nothing. I mean, this stuff isn't new. House settlement, all this. It's not. But now, Big East talking about it. Commissioners going out, doing interviews, going on panels, doing everything to have everyone look at the Big East. And I gotta wonder why. Because I think it was Greg, maybe it was Jumon or someone who talked about how UConn was supposedly tied in with the Big 12 in terms of, private equity talks, firms that they were talking to really wanted to see them as part of it and part of the deal. RedBird is in New York City, right? So probably one of those who's looking at that because it's up there. It's in the Northeast. Once you have them, you start to have ties to some of those other Big East, Northeast schools. I think, something like this doesn't just pop up. Like people under, in the know would have heard this talk, like this thing is really coming together. And so I got to wonder if the Big East is running a little scared right now. They're getting out there. They're trying to figure out what's going on. I've brought them up with the pack, and that's good, but that's still not for sure that it saves you UConn if Big 12 comes calling. Because you're the financial guy, what happens to the Big East and that new TV dealers if they lose UConn?
Yeah, a huge loss for him. And you bring up a great point, Immaculate, and we know that Yormark has talked about it before. He wants to see a separation of football media rights and basketball media rights. Who's to say that he doesn't look at the Big East now and say, hey, look, you guys join us in basketball only, and we'll have a separate media rights deal for basketball and football. But yeah, I think UConn, from what I was told is one of the private equity firms, we don't know who, was very keen on UConn joining the Big 12 so that they would have a footprint inside New York City.
Right. So, dot connecting sometimes connects dots that aren't supposed to be connected.
Yeah.
But it's from the outside looking in, it's the only way to kind of figure out what's coming at us. And so that's why I say when you have a Big East commissioner who's all of a sudden super active, I tend to think something spurred that. Because here's the thing, this talk about the ACC and the Big East, I have to laugh at it, especially when she goes on an interview and she's like, yeah, I'd be open to it. Oh, yeah? How open are you to destroying your own job, to actually putting in work and effort to killing your job? That's when people, you kind of got to look at it and go, okay, I call bullshit. Because you're not going to actively work to make your job no longer exist, or all the people who work underneath you at the headquarters. So that's where real life kind of fuels you to know. And so to me, what they need to do is they need a partnership, man. They need a partnership with someone who's not going to take UConn except in football. So is there anything there for the ACC to do with them to where you don't take UConn basketball away from the Big East? Because otherwise, you're not getting anyone inside the Big East to help with that. And the only one that I really see helping being able to do that is the Pac. They're the only ones that can have any gain with taking UConn football and not basketball. If the Pac is willing, or if the Big East is willing to take those schools that the Pac wants to invite in the East as football only members. So the Pac or the Big East takes those schools, lets them all go to the West for football, and possibly preserves UConn in the Big East. I don't know if it's happening. I have no inside source on this, but right now, it's the only other thing we're hearing is the Big East and the ACC, and that's just, there's no way the headquarters is working on that. So I'm kind of curious what you guys think on that, because I think basketball is growth time. The NBA is going down. Just numbers say it. Like, so are people just not caring about basketball? I don't think that's the case. I just think they don't like the NBA anymore. So there's room for growth there. When you look at what the SEC is doing, that's like a conference-wide initiative to grow your basketball programs. They came out of nowhere in like 2 to 3 years. That's a serious push. So I kind of wonder if they're looking at like there's actually more room for growth there than we realize. Yormark's seeing it. SEC now sees it. The Pac, they invited Gonzaga. Reports now they're going to bring St. Mary's. Maybe there's more to basketball than we realize. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, basketball is the second most important revenue generating sport, right? And the Big East contract did almost double in size. While it's only $80 million per year, it almost doubled compared to the prior media rights agreement. So there's money in basketball, but it's just when we're talking about like keeping the athletic department afloat, there's not enough in basketball at this point in time. Let me clarify something. So like this this UConn idea and stuff. So you think that the Big East is trying to press the issue with the ACC to get an agreement in place to stick UConn and make it a little more sticky for UConn not to leave? Is that my understanding?
Actually, no, because that wasn't brought up by the Big East. That was elements of the Big East brought that up, right? So almost kind of like there's some other talk going on in the Big East to make those folks say, oh, we don't like that. We like this instead. Does that make sense? Because it was not the commissioner that brought it up. That was just a coach, Patino.
Yeah.
St. John's, who's got a lot of connections up to that higher level, kind of the major conferences. And then Coach K, who's not even at Duke anymore, just kind of acting in some regard. It kind of makes you wonder. But they asked the commissioner that in an interview. I think it was John Arand who asked her that. And she was like, oh, yeah, that sounds, we might be open to that, which it's polite talk for, no. I mean, you're not getting any conference commissioner to work actively at destroying their own job. That's, largely why probably the Mountain West and the Pac didn't happen. You're counting on commissioners to make this happen, and they're not going to do anything, real hard to destroy their own jobs. So I think that something else is happening, and I've suggested it's this other thing, but it could be something else, and I'm open to suggestions. But it just kind of seems like the Big East is working very hard to be seen right now, to put something out.
Yeah.
And maybe if they're in a negotiation with the Pac, and maybe there's a little bit more they want out of it, you got to try to show like, hey, we have this other suitor, or hey, we have these other options. It's just, a negotiation tactic to increase your leverage. Like, I don't know if we like that. We got this other idea over here. And like I said, it doesn't have to be the Pac, but something with someone, because they are eventually going to lose UConn. UConn is bleeding money for football, and they want to keep it. So I'm just kind of curious on your guys' thoughts on and maybe not even today, but just kind of over time, like what are they going to do? Because the moment they lose UConn,
party is over.
That deal is seriously in danger. So that's pretty much it, man. I just wanted to kind of get in here and see your thoughts on that, the loan and where it's going, because it kind of seems like two different diverging paths on it. And maybe it's both. Maybe it's super complicated, but I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Well, I appreciate you stopping by, Immaculate. We'll have to get together and have you on Mowing After Dark sometime.
Sounds good, buddy. We'll
All
see
right.
you guys soon.
Yep. Take it easy. Have a good weekend. Thank you, Immaculate. Let's give him a little applause on the way out. It's our friend Immaculate. ACC English. I see you. You're coming up next. I got to get to some business here first. We got a super chat from our friend Greg Flugar. Peek around the corner with Greg Flugar. When Golden Gophers play Buckeyes in Big Ten Championship game, December 2025, who will wear the visitor/white uniforms? Well, I think it'll be Ohio State, Greg, because I think Ohio State actually has a shot of making the championship game in 2025. But I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for dropping in and giving us a super chat. Appreciate you doing that show with me last night. It was a lot of fun. Let me see
Good
here.
stuff, yeah.
I'll give you a little sounder here.
Oh!
And
Greg,
Nelly!
he loves the Keith Jackson. So thank you again
you know
for
what?
the super
If
chat,
you listen
Greg.
to Pika, sorry, Mon, let me just step in real quick. So peek around the corner right before we came on, Greg was mentioning that the ACC, there's some rumblings that the ACC might have an opportunity with private equity as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they might have a chance at private equity, but the problem with the ACC is you got Florida State and Clemson in the courts.
Right?
Who wants to get in business with something that's, the Big 12 is not in a lawsuit with anybody. The Pac.
Maybe it's for vending machines at stadiums or something small.
The Pac and the Mountain West probably want to get into private equity too, but you know what? They're in a lawsuit together. I think that's probably one of the reasons why you see the Mountain West and Pac coming to or trying to get into mediation. So we'll see. Anyway, ACC English. I don't know if I pronounced that
Hey,
name
hey.
right, sir. Are you there?
Are you there, ACC? Try to go on off mute. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute. Okay. Okay. And let
go.
me ban him from studio. All right. Took him a while. That was a good one. I think
I think
that
we
was
found
probably,
realignment master.
I think that was Jim Phillips. Jim Phillips getting the news that the media deal is getting done for the
I love your protection. I love this like little shield that we've got here.
yes. Yeah. I don't mind the scream. Scream's not bad. I just don't want to see anybody's baby penis anymore. Take yourself to the doctor if you've got that problem. All right, we're going to get to some more comments. If anybody wants to join, you can jump in there. But I do want to get to some more comments while we're here. We're only got about 15 minutes left, guys, and we're going to wrap it up. But a long show for me last night, so I'm a little wiped. Steel Austin defending Utah says Utah draws higher ratings and viewership, sells more merchandise, and makes more revenue than BYU.
Utah does get more viewership. That's a fact. Yeah, as far as the merchandise and everything else, I haven't checked into that. But look, they're both great brands, Utah and BYU.
Mr. Monkey says disagree, Steel. Huge following. Now that they're in the Big 12, they'll just get bigger, but still don't think they'll ever be attractive to P2. That's not a knock. Yeah, listen, I like Utah. I like them as a school, like them as a sports teams. They're probably not going to get into the Big 10 at this point, guys.
And why is that, Moan?
There's just more attractive candidates out there. I think that's the same problem with Florida State. I say it all the time. The thing that hurts Florida State more than anything else in getting into the Big 10, you've got Miami there. You've basically got somebody that you can leverage off and play off of each other to, let me butcher this. K. Liani L. Possible private equity investment in the Big 12 is financed through debt, which will be collateralized by the Big 12's operation and assets. Okay. Break that down for me. Does that sound accurate?
So possible private equity investment is financed through debt, which is collateralized by the Big 12's operations and assets. That's how a loan will typically work. And a loan that's secured by the whole operation of a company. If you want to put that in banking terms, that's called a blanket lien. That is not what we're talking about here. This is very different. We're talking about private equity company doing a private capital deal for a nonprofit organization that is attaching itself to a new undeveloped revenue stream that the private equity firm has deemed to be valuable that they're going to approach the Big 12 with. A new source of revenue that they will get a chunk of the sales generated from that revenue source, not estimated figures between 12 to 15% of the revenue share. That's the new, we're going to use that revenue sharing as far as a private capital structure. So it's this looks like a typical loan, but this isn't a loan we're talking about. It's a hybrid.
I want to put this out here and I want to coin it so the phrase gets coined. We talk about milk on this channel all the time. We shouldn't call it revenue share. It should be the skim.
What is that?
That's a lady who loves her milk. From now on, it's no longer the revenue share. We're talking about the skim when we're talking about private equity, private capital. The skim.
The skim.
Stormy Cyclone.
Realignment master. Realignment master.
RedBird is in Hong Kong, Dubai, LA, New York, and an office in Greenwich, Connecticut. Greenwich, Connecticut, real close to Bristol, Connecticut, home of, I don't know, a few small companies here and there. BYU football. Shonsky says, I can't remember what we were talking about. I've been smoking the Georgia Tech game, and I'm blitzed. I believe it.
I believe it too.
You want to smoke the marijuana? You don't like my marijuana.
Thank you, Sheiky, baby. Towtown Hawk says, Big East basketball tournament used to be a big deal on TV. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what network it is now on these days. Fox, maybe. I believe it was Fox and TNT is who their partners are. Correct?
Fox, TNT. There's one more too. Yeah, there's one more. It's TNT, Fox, and NBC. That's it.
There you go. Mr. Monkey says, I just formed a pretty complex prop and asked ChatGPT to rank Big 12 media value, and it ranked the old Big 12 with Oklahoma and Texas. You ain't kidding. Do not rely on AI to figure stuff out, because it won't work, guys. It does not work. Don't trust AI. Box Pandaro says, nothing spends better than Flugar cash. Yeah, if I could eat red meat anymore, I would go get a cheeseburger. You got to promise me something.
What's that?
You got to use that money and eat a cheeseburger with it.
I will.
Bring a cheeseburger home next Friday and eat a cheeseburger on stream. Get a Wendy's Baconator, son of Baconator deal, something like that, and really go to town on it. There's a lot of people who watch those YouTubes for mukbangs, where people just eat a bunch of fast food.
What are you talking about?
You never heard of that? It's called a mukbang.
What?
Yeah. Mukbang.
Wait, you're telling me people just film themselves just absolutely
gorging? Oh yeah, just big fat people. They'll get like.
No, you're lying.
No, I'm not.
How do you find this?
Yeah, they get like 5 buckets of KFC, and then they'll just film themselves.
No way.
I'm serious, dude. I've seen them do it with funnels and chocolate milk before. It's
what?
They drink chocolate milk through a funnel.
What's
they
a
really have someone hold a
mukbang?
funnel, and it's called a mukbang. We'll have to do that. We'll have to do a mukbang mafia night or something.
We got to do it with the Skyline chili. We still need to do that. Mukbang Skyline chili.
I'm not eating Skyline chili. It'll never cross my lips. Towtown Hawk says, Moen, what if they are both wearing visitor badges, not uniforms? Very true. What if they're wearing disguises with Ray-Bans that can record video? Man, it's not an unusual outfit for certain teams in the Big Ten. Vox Pandaro, therefore Florida State and Clemson are going to have to be incentivized to drop their lawsuits. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. They've got all the leverage now. Or they've got more leverage. I shouldn't say they have all the leverage. They've got more leverage.
Yeah, or they just continue in the lawsuits and put the pressure on the ACC to reduce the fees to exit. That's another alternative. If you want to see it from the Knoll standpoint, they're like, lower those exit fees or get out of here, and then you can do your private equity deal.
Immaculate had a feeling on that one with the name AC Singlish. I still don't get the name. I still don't get the name.
I have no
one's
idea.
going over my head.
It's realignment master. Let's be honest. We know who it is.
Probably. He probably wanted to scream because everybody laughs when they see his penis. Did I show my penis? No, but somebody did. Somebody did. If you missed it on Sunday, I guess you missed out.
Yeah,
I was at the last.
Only. That's been edited.
That's right. I was at the last Iowa State UConn football game. It was fun, though the stadium needs an upgrade. Yeah, I think. Listen, this UConn thing that has been brought up. Private equity deal. There was a private equity company that. I don't want to say they were tied to UConn as a member, but they definitely wanted UConn as a member. And so we'll see. Connecticut has made some strides. They're going to have to get a new stadium. You're right. That stadium just needs to be demolished and a new stadium can be built. You cannot upgrade that stadium. But yeah, I know there's, let me ask you, you're a Big 12 guy, and I'll ask the chat as well. If you're in the chat, you're a Big 12 fan, represent a Big 12 team. Let me know your opinion in the chat as well. You get this private equity deal, but it comes with the caveat you have to add UConn in all sports.
No.
Okay.
No. No. No.
How much money? Let's say it's going to be $10 million per team per year.
How much without UConn?
Well, it'll be whatever you have now.
So you're telling me like UConn's the crux? They won't do the
Let's
deal
say,
without UConn?
we're just saying hypothetical. Let's say RedBird is the private equity company that wanted UConn in the Big 12. They come to you and say, okay, here's a guaranteed $160 million, but you have to add UConn.
$10 million per year, every year?
Per year, per team.
Can we negotiate that a little bit more? Sounds like we need 20. We need 20 more million every year per team.
Okay. You're a Utah guy. You're a Utah guy saying that.
Like there is a cost benefit analysis. Like I think that if you're talking about $10 more million per school per year, like that's 160 million per year, right? For the conference that's distributed. Yeah. I don't think there's much of a debate. That's an absolute yes.
Yeah.
Is UConn really going to flip that? No, there's no chance it'd be that much more valuable. Like, let's talk about UConn here just for a second.
Okay, let's talk about UConn. All right, we'll go hypothetical here. We know their stadium sucks. Their football stadium is absolute ass. It's a brick stadium. It's a high school level stadium. They need to get rid of that stadium, build a new stadium. They commit. They get with the state of Connecticut. State of Connecticut commits some money. They do a bond measure, something. They're going to build a domed stadium up there in Connecticut. Not a huge dome that can fit 36,000 people. Something similar to what Northwestern's doing.
So if they get a stadium, you're saying like
a new stadium. They would have to have a new stadium. Have to be a new stadium.
If they committed to a new stadium, fine, right? If you're bringing 160 million in per year, I mean, that's a no-brainer still. Like realistically, it would never be that much though. Maybe like you're talking like maybe $2 or $3 million per year per team. And then like you're talking about if you add UConn, you're basically kind of going all in a basketball in my point of view. You're not bringing UConn in for the football.
You're not bringing UConn in for football, but here's what you're bringing UConn in for, the market. New York City market. It gets you into the New York City market. Travel partners for West Virginia. West Virginia has been on an island for far too long. Cincinnati's in the same boat. Travel partners for those two schools. West Virginia especially has dealt with the travel issue far more than anybody else in the Big 12 for the longest time. So, second point I would make, we've talked about it before. Northeast corridor for the Big 12 if the ACC collapses. Virginia Tech, Pitt, Syracuse, right in that nice Northeast corridor, gets you better time slots for your TV as well. You could have Colorado playing UConn. That could be a noon game now. You know, Colorado plays, usually whoever has the game, Fox or ESPN, they're putting it up there. I just think there's a lot of benefits to UConn. I wouldn't dismiss them out of hand. I just wouldn't dismiss it out of hand.
Look, in an episode last year, did a Wildy realignment model on UConn and Syracuse. And despite my biases, which I acknowledge I do have because I love football, and this is college football mafia, I don't watch college basketball much. and UConn specializes in basketball. That's why the bias exists, right?
Sure.
The model itself that we had built out for the Big 12 said it's a no-brainer add. Forget anything with private equity. UConn would be such a strength because of the market presence that it could be one of the most valuable Big 12 teams. I'm serious. That's what the data says, which is weird, right? Like, but I have my own personal biases where I just don't like that.
Yeah.
And I push against it, right?
Yeah,
Data loves it.
I think there's benefits. You're right. There's cons too. Towtown Hawk says, I knew a girl that used a funnel in vodka, not in the traditional way. Did you get her number? That's what I want to know. Get her
What's
number.
going on at the KU frat houses here?
Hey, KU might be more of a fit for the Big Ten than I thought. All right.
Show the KU lady.
Oh,
Remember, like your new long legs. Reminds me of a KU lady when you play that.
No, I got to get the comment off her first. Hold on. We'll get that comment back up first.
Jayhawk.
Look at all those
Jayhawks. Look at that. Look at those legs.
Yeah, I still don't know what species a Jayhawk is, because in some of the newer ones they have spurs like they're chickens or turkeys. But that was our bet in college. If you could drink a gallon of chocolate milk without puking, I will go ahead and let everybody know it can be done. The likelihood of it being done is near impossible due to the content of milk. It's got a high fat content. You're going to throw up. You're going to throw up.
There's a lot of good comments.
Shonsky says, Mon, I thought I left my pizza in the then realized I already ate it. He is
Shonsky. Man.
Shonsky is hitting it. A little he's got some of the good Chiba tonight.
So here's okay, Shonsky, we're on this type of conversation. Okay, there's this rumor out there. I don't know if this is true, but in Ute circles, there's like a certain tailgate spot at Lavelle Edwards Stadium that's a secret tailgate spot where you can actually really tailgate outside the stadium. Like, it's super secret. Like, the coordinates are like hard to get. Apparently, it rotates around all the time. If you happen to have that, I might go to the Utah BYU game, and I will need to check that out. So
Make it sound like it's Skull and Bones, like there's some secret.
No, Mon, I'm not joking you at all. This is no joke. I really am not joking. Like, you can't tailgate outside, like in the stadium stuff. You can't bring any type of beer or alcohol in because it's prohibited on campus. It really is. You can't have any of that stuff. So there's apparently a select few Cougar fans that have a little bit different interpretation that like to rotate around. And I would just like to meet them and tailgate with them.
Got to learn the handshake first. Got to learn them grips. Vox Pandaro, sometimes you got to take a bite of the sandwich. Talking about UConn, I think so. Steele Austin says, not a Big 12 fan. It's a hard pass on UConn. Don't want the private capital anyway. Boy, Steele Austin seems like he's a holdout, He's still not fully committed to the Big 12.
They need to integrate. Must integrate.
Towtown Hawk, as a KU fan, I would hate having to add UConn to get the money. I can see some other teams having no problem with it, like UCF, Cincy, Houston, who really need the money more. Yeah, I'm again 6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other.
Is there any Big 12 fan base that just wants UConn so bad?
I think the Eastern schools would like having a closer travel partner. And I understand UConn's not exactly next door to West Virginia, but it's a hell of a lot closer than Provo is.
Right.
AMAC says Utah ain't signing that deal. They think they are destined for the Big Ten. Hey, man, never say never. That's what Journey says. Don't stop believing, brother. Vox Pandaro, it matters how much UConn and the perceived New York City market are worth to RedBird, not any of us. And that's true. You've got to look at it from that point of view, too. Getting into the New York market, That could help you tremendously in your next media deal.
Especially if they do a corporate naming rights deal. There's their new revenue string that they don't have yet that RedBird would get a hold of. Like you mentioned, Moan, if it's not Allstate, is it Prudential or some type of insurance company or somebody else that they can just market the crap out of in New York City, right? That's what makes it valuable.
And most of your advertising firms are out of New York City, so you're going to be right there in the central. You know, I'm sure ESPN would like to have that there as well. Stormy Cyclones says, or Kansas new stadium says, yeah, anything. They've just got to get a better stadium. If I'm Connecticut, though, you've got the Gold Coast right there. You've got the money. There are people who could pony up enough money to get you to where you could build a decent little dome of some sort, maybe hold 30,000. Good evening, Mafia fam. Good evening, Replica. Good to see you. AMAX says UConn isn't close to West Virginia. Again, they're not side by side, but it's a hell of a lot closer than Provo. Mr. Monkey says the problem is you also get UConn fans. Speaking as a Big Ten guy who took Oregon in, I feel you, but I will say some of their fans are pretty good people. We've got some good Oregon fans, but a lot of them are kind of
learn to love them.
Vox Quindaro says we're professionals. We're dinosaurs, you peasants. I think he's talking about the Jayhawks. I guess there's some form of dinosaur.
The Jayhawks a dinosaur? I thought the Jayhawks weren't they like the militia? Something, one of the wars? I don't know. We need more background.
That's what I think a Jayhawk sounds like. Mr. Monkey says it's a mythical bird. It's any species you want.
It's got long legs too. At least they used to have long legs. They evolved.
Good point, Vox. Town Hawk. These guys know about Jayhawks. I don't know enough. BYU football. This will be our last comment, guys. We went a little over tonight, and we got to wrap it up. Moen, I thought I had left the pizza in the oven. He had already ate it. Yeah, that sounds hot, hot, hot. I should have tested the soundboard tonight and run through all of them because I left the battery.
Hot.
You might need some milk for that.
He needs some milk. He needs some milk.
Absolutely. I'm trying to find another milk gift. There's small milk. Little milk for you. All right, guys.
What won't be milk is this. This won't be milk right here, guys. This is how smart the ACC and Big East merger is. There's no milk here. This is dry as a bone. Yeah.
Not raining money. So hopefully, I from what I'm to understand, we're going to hear a little bit more leaks on the Big 12 private capital deal early next week. So hopefully that'll be pretty cool to check out. Until then, I will see you guys on Sunday for Moen After Dark at 7 p.m. with my friend Rock and Rant. I want to thank everybody who came out to join us tonight. I know it's been a long 2 days for everybody. Greg's show yesterday, our emergency show yesterday, Greg's shows tonight, our show tonight. I do want to thank Bill G for gifting the 5 memberships. I want to thank Stormy Cyclone for his $5 super chat. And I want to thank Greg Flugar for his $10 super chat and for doing the show with me last night. I want to thank, of course, everybody here in the chat. I've got an assignment for you guys. Emotes. Think about emotes, guys. We've got one slot opened up for members emotes. We've got to get a new emote. Let me know what you guys want. We'll come up with something good, but I want you guys to come up with it. You guys are the members. We'll come up with it. We'll get some finalists and we'll put it to a vote. Until Sunday, peace out, guys.
Go Utes.